a lot of us are really hungry for maternal advocacy and talk about, less individual things and more community things and more legislative issues that are impacting us. And I think we all have like a new vocabulary for issues pertaining to motherhood that maybe pre-pandemic we didn't have.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. My next guest is the author of my favorite Substack called In the Pursuit of Clean Countertops, the author of Momfluenced, and a writer based in New Hampshire. Her essays about feminism, domesticity, and motherhood have appeared in the New York Times, Harper's Bazaar, the Washington Post, InStyle, Glamour, and elsewhere. Her first book, Momfluenced, examines the performance of motherhood through the multi-layered phenomenon of mummy influencer culture and what this reveals about the texture of modern motherhood and what we might learn from it. In this episode, Sara and I talk about how the patriarchy is woven into our everyday, whether we see it or not, why the childcare system is utterly broken, and how mothers often carry the burden of most parenting without even knowing it or recognizing it because it is what we've always been expected of. Please welcome the incredibly talented, my favorite Substacker, Sara Petersen.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I don't even know how I discovered you, but it was definitely Substack.
Okay.
And you're such a great writer.
Oh, thanks.
And I was like, wow, she's saying stuff that other people shouldn't be saying. She's speaking my thoughts in words that I fully understand. And she has this incredible book called Momfluenced, of which I've been reading and sifting and going back and forth. And I just love how you bring so much important, messages to light about what it means to be a momfluencer.
Thank you so much.
All the way from the other side of the continent. I don't know, the country. I'm in Canada. She's in the US. But I'd love to know quickly, what do you do and who do you do it for?
Yeah, so I'm a writer. I have a Substack. You mentioned that. My book just came out and I've been freelance writing content about motherhood and feminism for several years. And I didn't start writing professionally until after having kids. Before that, I was like in between a million different careers. So yeah, I really started writing as a way to process my complicated feelings about motherhood and about the status of mothers in American culture.
Yeah, so you're saying that your kids gave you this inspiration to write?
Or the onset of motherhood, not necessarily like them or like their individuality, but more how I was feeling inhabiting the role of mother.
So they were great content for you.
Yeah, it wasn't really
in
them.
the essence of like you becoming a mother now, it's like you have a lot to talk about.
Yes. And it was all it was very me-centric is what I mean. Like I wasn't necessarily writing about like struggles with baby weaning or like it was about like feeling really ragey and feeling really depressed and feeling really unfulfilled. And so it had way less to do with them and more to do with me trying to figure out who I was as a mother.
So beautiful. Really probably was not a beautiful time, but I get it.
Yeah.
And I'm still ragey and my kids are 10 years old. Is this normal?
Yeah. Yes. No, I'm 100% still ragey. And yes, I'm ragey about the little things in my day-to-day life, but I'm also like, there's a deep undercurrent of rage at the systemic issues facing many mothers, particularly in the US, that sort of informs everything. so little systemic support, so little cultural respect for the labor of mothering. And I think that is bound to make almost every mother ragey to an extent.
Right. And then, but also, we're in this beautiful generation where not only do we see it, but we can talk about it and we can start making a difference. So there's a gift there. Because before it's like, you go, you have your baby at the hospital, you don't talk about it. If you're depressed and pain oozing out of every orifice, that's nobody else's business but yours.
Yeah.
And now you're like, stake in the ground. I don't think so. We are collectively going through this as women. Why can't we talk about this publicly?
Totally. And I think even since I had my first kid, he's 10, the difference between then and now in terms of the conversations we're having really feel big. At the same time, I had I was the first in my peer group to have kids, so I didn't have access to a vibrant motherhood community. I do think those communities are easier to access now online and via social media, which can hopefully lead to IRL interactions. But it's been interesting to track the evolution of mom communities. Yeah.
I mean, even to the other side of the spectrum, I've been seeing companies now offering menopause leave.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Right? Where is this coming from? Because again, women can't talk about it. And there was actually, and I think I talked about this in another episode. So there's a big stampede in Calgary called the Calgary Stampede. Okay. It's like all the cowboys go and the cowgirls.
Yep.
And there's a booth there. Yeah, I don't know the product and I should, but I was just so mesmerized by the fact that they have those little electrodes they hook up to your stomach and it's supposed to give you the sensation of period cramps.
Oh.
So it goes, I guess, from 0 to 10, 10 being the most extreme.
Yeah.
The lady that was womaning the booth, not manning the booth, pulled these 2 Calgary Stampede officers aside and said, hey, you should try this. The guy's like, yeah, whatever, put it on me. I got this, right? Big tough guy. And when she was getting him all hooked up, she's like, just so you know, I would classify my PMS pains at about a 7.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, cool. So she starts it, cranks him up to 1 and then 2 and then 3. He's squirming. He's uncomfortable. And he's like, what does 7 feel like?
Yeah.
And then he goes, wow. So all this to say is now we're starting to talk about it and now we're trying to give men the sensation of what it's like to be a woman.
That's incredible.
I know, right?
I didn't know that existed.
Every man should do it. I'm just joking. So anyways, you have this book called Momfluenced and I love it. You talk about, and what I love about this too is that you're bringing in all these stories of so many other women across so different cultures, socioeconomic statuses, all this stuff. What influenced you to write the book, Momfluenced?
Really my own interaction with Momfluencer content. I absolutely do regret missing the first wave of quote unquote mommy bloggers like Heather Armstrong of Deuce. She's been credited as being the first quote unquote mommy blogger. And, in the early aughts, she and women like her really revolutionized talking about the more challenging aspects of motherhood, maternal mental health struggles, and created these really vibrant, flourishing communities for women to talk about things that had been taboo before. And so I miss that. I think it would have been really beneficial for me had I found those blogs. But the first blogs I interacted with were Naomi Davis's blog, Love Taza, and Amber Fillerup-Clark's blog, which was then called Barefoot Blonde. And these were renditions of motherhood that were very, very stylized, very aesthetically driven, very joyful, very rooted in the feminine. And I was consuming this content when I had a newborn and a toddler and was still struggling to just find myself as a mother. And I was looking at these blogs, seeing the joy that they were performing online and really feeling like, why am I struggling to find that in my own life? And, are they doing something differently than me that I could do to access that same joy and sense of fun and adventure? Despite knowing that, of course, they had bad days. Their kids had tantrums. Their houses were messy at times. I knew this intellectually, but I still I perceived that they had, and, I perceived myself to be lacking. So I started just following that trail, which eventually led to Ballerina Farm. She has over 1 million followers on Instagram. She's a rancher in Utah, has 7 kids, is married to one of the children of the founder of JetBlue. And her whole thing is that she and her husband have this ranch. They're very like pioneer centric. She makes all her food from scratch. And so I'm just really fascinated with these performative motherhoods that are rooted in the domestic, rooted in gender norms. And I think it's fascinating to look at where these ideals came from and how they're informing our lives today.
Yeah. All I could think about was the shame on how I felt so ashamed that I couldn't always have the curly hair, the perfect nails, the beautifully structured photo shoots with my family.
Right.
I mean, maybe we have like a couple falls where we came together and we were wearing matching shirts. And I was like so proud of myself because this is what you do all for the gram.
Right.
And we just gave up. I was like, you know what? We'll take a picture when it's, and our photo shoots now are just whenever. And I don't care anymore. And then there's this evolution now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of women that do a beautiful job of capturing beautiful moments. But now, as of late, we're seeing kind of like the fall back to just having stuff that are not filtered, messy buns, no makeup, just came out of the gym, doing their own thing. Maybe it was a great workout, maybe not. Maybe you just locked the door and you went in there and you were going on Instagram, pretending to work out. I've done that before. Right? So now you're seeing this shift.
Yeah. And I think there's always been, since women have been sharing motherhood online, there have always been those moms that are speaking to quote unquote, like hashtag real motherhood. And I do think there's only so many pretty mommies in their pretty houses we can consume before we're tired of it. And we want like a profane mother, a funny mother, a vulnerable mother who's talking about hard things. And yeah, I think there will always be, both of these things will always be reflected online. And I do think, especially with TikTok, there is more emphasis on sort of unfiltered, grittier portrayals of motherhood. And I think post-pandemic, a lot of us are really hungry for maternal advocacy and talk about, less individual things and more community things and more legislative issues that are impacting us. And yeah, I don't know. I think we all have like a new vocabulary for issues pertaining to motherhood that maybe pre-pandemic we didn't have.
Do you think there's a shift or the shift happening?
I think so. And I think in a funny way, the rise of like trad mom content, for anyone that doesn't know, trad mom or trad wife, trad stands for traditional. And really what unites them is just an adherence to traditional gender roles. And I think the rise of content like this, skewing to more conservative, far-right politics, is a reflection of the fact that so many mothers are becoming more outspoken and more progressive and more left-leaning post-pandemic. So yeah, I feel like anytime with progress, it's one step forward, 2 steps back. But I do think we are seeing a sea change.
I hope so.
Yeah.
In Canada, we have great mat leave.
Yeah.
If
okay.
you're not an entrepreneur, or if you're at least paying yourself like a salary with all the right structure. I mean, obviously that makes sense, but
right.
I just remember so I had both my boys are 11 months apart.
Oh my gosh.
In the same year that I started my agency. And I was like, in order to be paid, I have to work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't want to be the one that was showing up for work the day after my son was born.
Yeah.
I had to be the one.
Oh my gosh.
And people were like, wow, you're such a hustler. Like, good for you. I was like, no, this is not the example I'm trying to share at all. And back in the day, it was applauded, it was glorified.
Yeah.
And because I was getting that positive attention, I may have fed into it. I know I fed into it. And nowadays, I'm like, don't do what I do. No,
right.
Don't do that. We are gifted in this country to be able to step away, to be with our family. Why aren't we taking advantage of that? So here we have that. I know in the States, it's like, I remember before I even knew what mat leave was like in the US, my friends are like, yeah, I got to go back to work tomorrow. I'm like, but your baby's only 3 months old. What do you mean back to, who's going to watch your baby?
Right.
Like, Who watches a 3-month-old? How does that even work?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work. And even like, you were saying you are gifted this time. Like, even that, I don't think it's a gift. I think we all deserve it. It should be a human right. You know what I mean?
True.
Like,
Totally.
like, I think it's so wonderful that you have access to that, but I really do think it is a humane thing that all people who have children should have access to. And it 100% does not work in the US. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, bad, bad. And it needs to be completely, our care infrastructure is non-existent and everything depends on care work, everything, including capitalism. And if we don't completely upend this very, very broken system, it's just going to continue to be miserable for caregivers and mothers.
Who's doing it right?
I mean, I feel like everybody always points to Scandinavian countries, but there are so many countries across the world that are doing, if not a perfect job, at least a humane job and a decent job. The fact that the US has no federally mandated paid family leave is just, it's unconscionable.
And the thing about that too is like, so there's this book that I love. It's called The Importance of Being Little. Have you read this book?
No.
Oh my, it's like my favorite parenting book. It's not even a parenting book, but maybe it is. She talks about how the most important thing for a child in and outside of school up to the age of like 7 or whatever is positive physical touch, holding hands, hugging, embracing, that reinforcement, because that's what kids need.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? You can't do now.
Right.
And even so, like when I think about this 3-month-old, do they go to daycare in the US?
Yeah. Yep.
Whoa.
Daycare. And daycare is prohibitively expensive and inaccessible many times. It's either daycare or a nanny. And both options are really, really expensive, despite the fact that the caregivers working as nannies or in daycare facilities are not paid enough. So it's every angle is broken.
Do you consider yourself to be a VIP, a very important person? Well, I do, especially if you are a female entrepreneur, you run a business, maybe you're an executive in a top organization, and you know that your company just needs a little extra help to get to the next level, especially when it comes to building authority and credibility. Well, I have something for you, the perfect fempreneur or power woman that is getting world-class PR work, world-class PR advice and strategies without the agency price. Listen, I've been in this industry for a very long time, 12 years, and I've seen the evolution of what public relations is, how to execute, how to work through the headaches of the unsubscribes, of the no's, of the time that you're pitching all day long and you're getting no replies. Those are called crickets. Let's smush those crickets. All you have to do is go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day to learn how you can get a world-class PR strategy built for you by me and my team that you can integrate into your everyday marketing initiatives. Because here's the thing about PR. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yes, you have sprints, but it is a marathon. The people that are successful in getting on the top podcasts or successful in getting media coverage are obviously creating value to readers and listeners, but also that can provide the value again and again. So becoming the go-to expert in your industry. PR helps you increase your authority, helps increase credibility, searchability. It's great SEO juice. And I know a lot of you are like, Renee, I just don't have the budget to hire a $50,000 agency. That's why I've created the VIP day. It's a done for you service. And all you got to do is take the strategy when it's done. And I teach you all this on the integration call, and you execute it daily within your organization. And it's not something that you, the founder, has to do. It could be your VA or your EA or even your second in command. The whole point of this is I wanted to give access to world-class PR strategies, tips, advice, execution on PR strategies to the women out there who want to grow their business and they want to be seen and heard. So if you're interested, go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day. So there's a co-working space here called Productivity.
Oh.
So they instead of productivity, they throw the word kid in there.
Yeah, I see that.
And it's a co-working space that is connected to a childcare facility that they own.
Yep.
And then if you are a co-working resident, you get a discount on the daycare.
Yep.
And then you get first right of refusal. But what's cool, because I got a tour of all this, is their business model is they pay on average, I think it was like $5 per hour more for their educators in their facility than anywhere else. And obviously that comes back to the customer. But guess the type of women, mostly women, that are in that facility, they really care.
Yeah.
Because guess what? If you just pay them more because they're worth that much, they'll actually perform better. It's a crazy notion. It's a really crazy notion.
Right.
But how cool is that? And
that's so cool.
Government subsidized. No, it's like she's the entrepreneur. She's like, I have twins, I have kids. This is what I want, and I'm going to create it for other women.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so getting back to your book, so in having these interviews and conversations with these women, were there any big and notable aha moments for you when you were chatting with these women, or even just doing the research for the book?
Yeah, I mean, so many moments like that. I think one central aha moment is that the work that professional momfluencers are doing is not only like multi-skilled labor. They're wearing so many hats. They're writers, they're editors, they're artists, they're photographers, they're business people. It's also incredibly emotionally difficult labor in that there's a constant blurring between private and public life. There's a constant balancing act of how much do I share? How vulnerable should I be to be deemed, quote unquote, authentic? How do I protect my privacy? How do I protect my children's privacy while also still being, quote unquote, real for my followers? So I think just the sheer difficulty of the work is not maybe well understood in, mainstream conversations about this stuff. But every single momfluencer I talk to, and I'm talking about, with monetized accounts, just spoke to this push and pull to find balance, but to miss out on just checking out at 5 at the end of the day, or checking out for 2 weeks on vacation and not having to worry about the algorithm like hiding their content when they came back. So
two things on this. One is, do you know who Jillian Harris is?
Yeah. Yes.
So she lives like across the lake from me.
Okay.
I remember one time. So if anyone doesn't know Jillian Harris, she's an influencer. I don't know, maybe a momfluencer, but whatever. She's an incredible woman, gives back to the community here in Kelowna. And I remember watching stories from her maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when she was just kind of downloading her weekend plans. She's like, oh, this is the first weekend in a while where we don't have the photographer here and I'm not shooting content. And I'm like, but I mean, I'm like, but you only post like once or twice a day. Like, why is and it was just all consuming.
Right.
There's so much. And there was something else that I was going to say about this. Now I forget. We'll go back to what you were saying, but I wanted to interject with that because I don't believe people really understand what goes into it.
Totally. And the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is that the vast majority are not being paid that much. Brooke Aaron Duffy is an academic who wrote a book about influencer culture. And it came out a couple of years ago, but she estimated that only 9% were making enough to support their families or to live on, as the sole income. And I'm sure that number has changed a bit since then, but there are also so many momfluencers, so many influencers competing. So if a brand reaches out to one and offers $1,000 for an Instagram story, a post, and a reel, and the momfluencer says, no, that's not enough, I need $5,000, they can just say, okay, we're not working with you, and go down their list of 20 other very similar, momfluencers. So it's really, really hard unless you're in the top tier to make like incredible money. And I think there is this misconception that not only that it's easy, that you just take a few pretty pictures, but that they're all making like incredible scads of money. And that's just not the case.
I've been approached a couple times and I'm like, it's not just, I don't know. It's not aligned with my values, but yeah, I'm curious how much I get paid. And it's like, if you do 3 stories, a reel, and a couple posts, it'll be like $500.
Totally.
I go, but it's way more. Like I charge upwards to $200 an hour for some of the work that I do, and it's going to take me a day to put this together.
Totally. Totally.
And I get it because maybe my reach is not as great as some people. I really don't have that big of a reach. But you know what? I have followers that do buy the books I recommend. They do buy the mugs and the stuff. I don't know what the numbers look like, but I have influence.
Right.
just a little bit, just a little baby.
Yep. It really fluctuates wildly in terms of payment.
So these women, when they're the ones that you were speaking about in this book, when they were starting out on this journey, did they even consider this like a business or being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think the majority did, just because it has been, a viable income stream for, at least 10 years now. And, it's grown substantially since the onset. But yeah, I think as soon as people start gaining traction on social media and see that they can make money doing it, I think that influences how the account evolves and, the look and feel of the account, the sort of ethos of the account changes in accordance to how much or how little money they're making. And many of these women also were oh my God, I can never say this word, entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs? Am I entrepreneurs? Sure. No, I don't think I'm saying it right. Wait, say it.
There's entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur, no.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different way. You can say however you want.
No.
As long as it rhymes.
Okay, well, so many of them were creating their own businesses in other ways prior to having kids and sort of centering motherhood content. So yeah, I think certainly that type of person is going to do better than maybe somebody who's really used to a structured 9-to-5 work schedule and, used to very standard working conditions. I think you need to think on your feet. I think you need to be flexible. You need to be creative. You need to pivot if necessary. So I do think entrepreneurs, I still am not feeling like I'm saying it right.
Business owners.
Yes. Business owners and business creators do thrive in these conditions.
Man, it is so tough. I have some friends that are so good at just capturing the essence of something. I'll go out for dinner with a bunch of women, and my friend Anna, she just has a way of documenting it. It's how do you even think that way?
Totally.
I don't that video is not my memory of our dinner together, but you made it. So you really do have to be creative and think outside the box.
For sure.
Wow. So I now think that I want to hire a Momfluencer to head up marketing.
Oh my God. Business. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. It is. It's true. I mean, that's probably one thing that's holding me back is I just can't even think of things. I posted a reel today and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's good. I liked the music though. So
hey, you know what? Yeah.
Okay. So maybe this already exists, but I didn't see it. Why isn't there a dadfluenced book?
Largely because fatherhood is not upheld as the pinnacle of manhood, the way motherhood is. Certainly in American culture, motherhood is held up on this pedestal as being sort of every woman's destiny. It's upheld as a labor of love. It's very much seen as a biological imperative. And this cultural construction of motherhood was deliberately fashioned to uphold capitalism and uphold patriarchy. And yet, the same cannot be said of fatherhood. When you think of a woman's life, you think of it as little girl, ingenue, bride, wife, mother. You really think of it as being segregated into chapters in a way that, again, you don't for men. It's really just little boy, man. There's not when will you get married? When will you have kids? These questions are not asked of men the way they are of women.
I feel like I've asked men that question, partially because out of spite for being asked the same question. So, okay, but do you see it at all?
Sure. There are dadfluencers. It's just not a multi-billion-dollar industry the way Momfluencer culture is.
Right. Do you think other dads follow these dadfluencers the same way moms follow Momfluencers?
Yeah, but again, it's you and I could probably talk to almost any mother we know, and they will have at least one story about falling down at least one Momfluencer's, feed for hours, just scrolling. And I don't think the same could be said of every dad you poll.
Oh, so interesting. I talked to my husband about this, and if you talk to a man, from my experience, is like they look at how it's like the husband or the dad, his life is just like a 360 degree of everything from health to like wealth, relationships, business, activities, whatever it is. And then a mom, it's like the layer of mummying is so much thicker than anything else.
Right. Right.
And maybe it's because we carry that burden of worry with us everywhere we go.
Right.
We're often the default to all things parenting.
Right.
And let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Do we do this to ourselves?
No, I don't think we do. I think it's been done to us through centuries of, behavioral and cultural conditioning. A friend of mine, Chelsea Conaboy, wrote a book called Mother Brain. And it's about neuroscience and it's about sort of the myth of maternal instinct. Women are not biologically programmed to be better caregivers and better nurturers. Sure, people with uteruses have the ability to grow a baby and to nurse a baby, but there's nothing inherent about, because I am a woman, I am better suited to caregiving. It's really how we are raising and gendering kids that creates these conditions to assume that the mom should be the default parent in all things. Her number should be the first one on, emergency contact. And she should be the one we ask for recipes. And she should kiss the kid's boo-boo or whatever. All of these things have been culturally conditioned, not biologically. So yeah, I don't think we're doing it to ourselves. I think it has very much been done to us.
So then it's up to us to break that cycle.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think the noisier we are about how this isn't working, this is unequitable, and it's burning us all out, I think the better chances we have of restructuring these systems.
Ooh, okay. So maybe what are some things that, especially women, people that identify as women, mothers, what can we do to help stop that? Like even just like daily occurrences. What is something that most women you see doing that we can just be like, it's not just on me?
Totally. I mean, even the little emergency contact. You can write on school forms, like dad can be the first call or the first email. You can have conversations about like, which activities are you going to own? And by own, I mean like sign the kid up for soccer, buy the cleats, sign up to bring snacks, all of the little things that go with activity. You can have conversations with your partner about like, which activities are you going to own? Which am I going to own? I'm also really thinking about Eve Rodsky's work. She has 2 books. One is called Unicorn Space and one is called Fair Play. And it's about gendered divisions of labor within the home. And she very much breaks this down. And Fair Play, in fact, is like a how-to guide for how to do this and how to share these tasks and how to ensure that the mother is not always the default parent for everything and the default cook, the default cleaner. So many tasks fall under this umbrella of domestic labor.
Oh, I love it. Well, a couple of things we do here is one is I protect my sleep like it's nothing else.
Same.
And I don't have a problem falling asleep at night, but if I get woken up in the night, I cannot go back to sleep. And over the course of years, because of culture, I thought that I was just the de facto to my kids coming in the middle of the night if something happened or they had whatever.
Yep.
And I just turned to Dan one day. I was like, listen, dude, you fall asleep like that no matter what.
Yeah.
I go, why does this make any sense that a child be coming to me?
Right.
And so about a year ago, we talked to the boys like, listen, don't go to mama.
Yep.
You go to daddy.
Yep.
When there's something that comes up before and now they do, and it's so beautiful because I wear my little earplugs and now I don't even hear them. And if I do, I pretend to be asleep so that they don't know that I'm awake. And the other thing I caught myself doing yesterday is I always drive our kids to like camps and school and whatnot in the morning, and our nanny picks them up.
Yep.
And I was talking to my husband's assistant. She's like, hey, Dan actually has an opening on Friday morning. He can maybe drive the kids to camp.
Yep.
I said, oh, thank you. That'd be amazing. Super helpful. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, those are things and words I should be saying, but why can't he just be responsible for that too? Anyway, why can't he just And like, oh,
Right.
it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, it's like he's doing me a favor. Like, no, it's parenting.
Right. Totally.
I have a business to run. I get it. He does too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who makes more money.
Right. No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. So really quickly, a couple more questions. Are there any specific frameworks in your book that you teach?
No. The short answer is no. It's not a prescriptive book. It's very much like a peeling back the onion layers type of book and trying to not only understand my own feelings about this culture, but to sort of use my journey through it as a way to encourage others to sort of self-interrogate their feelings about it and maybe their own relationship with it, their usage of social media, their definitions of quote unquote good motherhood. So it's that versus this is how to do it or this is how to be or this will help.
Here's the formula to get your husband to do everything.
Yeah, no, that's not this
You've
book.
solved the problem. Free childcare for all Americans now. Imagine that. So this is the book, Momfluenced. I love the cover. It's very catchy.
Thanks.
It's like a retro-y kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Obviously totally my jam with the lights.
Totally.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about the work that you're doing or something that may be predominantly profound for our listeners?
Yeah, just if you are struggling in any way with maternal identity, there's a reason for that. And the reason is not you. So many of these ideals were formed by white dudes in power hundreds of years ago. And we have just been trained to view them as natural or as the norm. And they're not. And we really can create our own maternal identities and we can opt out of ideals. And I think everybody will be a lot better if we do so. And if you're interested in any of this stuff, it's what I write about on my Substack. So,
oh yes, please subscribe to it. Another thing I want to say too is when you find yourself reinforcing the patriarchy, don't feel ashamed of yourself because we often subconsciously do this.
For sure.
Call yourself out and be like, I'm going to change that next time.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We've all got internalized misogyny and it's hard. It's hard.
It is. And it takes courage, an audacious woman like you, a rebel, to be like, you know what? Nah, this isn't the way it's going to be going forward. So thank you.
Thank
for
you.
weakening that chain. It's not yet broken. One last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that comes to mind is like bralessness, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I have very small boobs. So like
Me too.
I am frequently braless.
My mosquito bites.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I guess just rejecting somebody else's norms and questioning those norms and asking if they work for me or if they don't and, creating my own ideals.
I love it. Well, Sara, if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
So my Substack is the best place, and that's In Pursuit of Clean Countertops. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, even though I think Twitter died yesterday.
Threads.
Yeah, I know. I got to do threads. At S. Louise Petersen.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time, the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.